Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role. The definitive product marketing course, Product Marketing Core, is the perfect platform for experienced product marketers to broaden their existing knowledge, as well as educate newcomers beginning with their product marketing journey. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world, and every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. The community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. With a PMA membership plan, everything a product marketeer could possibly need is all in there, all in one place. Whether you want to grab a template, learn about how to become more strategic from product marketeers who've mastered it, sit back and watch hundreds of hours of presentations from some of the world's most trusted brands, our packages have got it all and more. We really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop.
Welcome to the top 1%. Do what 99% of product marketers are missing. How to make your product irresistible with lessons from behavioral economics. Let's start with something easy. We are rational, right? We spend a lot of time on big decisions like what's the best school for our kids? What's going to set them up for a great future? In a time when we were commuting more often, we would think about what's the best way to get to work? Well, what's the weather like today? Is a subway or driving going to be better? What does pricing look like? We think about this really rationally. And something I would know a lot about, I used to work at Lyft. Which rideshare app should I use right now? People really like to think about balancing the amount of money it costs and the time it will take to get somewhere. Super rational. All right, let's start with a quick exercise. Who would agree that they are pretty rational? Take a moment to reflect on that. Now, I want you to imagine that it's date night. You live in New York City on the Upper West Side, and you decide with your partner that you're really in the mood for a great burger. You're walking around and you've got this great idea. Let's go to Shake Shack. Shake Shack is so good. You walk up and you see, whoa, that's quite a line. It looks pretty long. You ask the staff and they tell you the wait time is about 1 to 2 hours. I don't really want to stand in line for 1 to 2 hours. Well, what else could we do? You know, because you're pretty smart and you're pretty rational, like you told me earlier, you might do a quick search for burgers nearby and see that, wow, there are really 20 to 30 other pretty good options that could satisfy that burger craving nearby. All right, with that information, what would you do? Well, I'll tell you, if you live in Queens or Korea or California or Japan or Philly or Austin, you wait in line. These are actual photos of super long lines from Shake Shacks around the world. And no, it's not that Shake Shack is a super special restaurant or super special experience. You can probably think of something in your own neighborhood. In fact, in my neighborhood, Noe Valley in San Francisco, there's a sushi place called Saru Sushi. It's rated 4.7 stars on Google, and it usually has a 2-hour wait on the weekends in pre-COVID times. Now, you look down the street and there's a restaurant that also sells great sushi, rated kind of similarly, and there's rarely a long wait. What's going on here? Well, you think about that, you also think about finances. 71% of Americans are not saving enough money for retirement. We know we should, but we're not saving enough on average. 46% have less savings than they expected they would 5 years ago. And we also see it in things as mundane as airline purchases. I'm sure we've all stared at a screen just like this from a site like Expedia. You look at that top flight and you see, okay, it's leaving at 5 p.m. All right, it's $404. All right, makes sense. That bottom one is leaving at a similar time. Oh my gosh, it's almost gone. There are only 3 left. It must be so valuable. What am I missing that other people are noticing? And it turns out it's not just something in our brain that's questioning us. It's not just us. It turns out it bears out in studies. This study said we find that scarcity messages are valuable. The average Expedia message increased the expected utility of an unsophisticated traveler about 4%. These things have a real world impact. So it raises the question, are we that rational? No, we are not. And that's totally okay. That's totally normal. This is how we're programmed and this is how we behave. But here's the good news. We can use this to shape behavior for better marketing campaigns and better products. A little bit about me. I'm so passionate about this because I studied marketing undergrad at Wharton, where I was teased for taking 2 times the amount of marketing courses that I had to. And that led me to take a course called Contagious with Professor Jonah Berger, who wrote a book at the time. And actually, he ended up becoming my thesis advisor. I wrote about what goes viral in revolutionary Cuba. And I took all these consumer psych lessons and I started applying them in my first job out of school at American Express, where I used a lot of these lessons on loyalty products. I took that same knowledge and did it for transportation at Lyft. And now I'm thinking about how do we shape customer behavior all the time at telehealth company Hims and Hers. Here's what we're going to go through today. First, I'm going to walk you through the problem that I see in the way that product marketers do their work. And all of us fall prey to this all the time. Next, I'm going to walk you through the 3 steps to supercharge your product growth with psychology. I use these all the time, and I'm going to share them with you today. I'm going to share a few case studies with you to prove that you can actually put this in practice yourself. And then we're going to talk about a framework so you can apply it on your next project. Let's start with the problem. 95% of new products fail, and it is not for lack of trying. Really smart people and really smart teams use great tools like market research, UX research, and competitive analysis to try to set their products up for success. But here's the thing, people tend to forget to start with people. There's a whole world of human insight that you should be applying to your work. I want you to imagine a world where your growth tactics were more effective. You didn't need incremental budget to scale. And you didn't always have to dilute your brand with discounts that cheapened what people were willing to pay for it. We're going to do that exactly today. It's going to become a reality, not just an imagined world, with the 3 steps to supercharge with psychology. Step number 1, you're going to nudge them. That is designing the behavioral environment really deliberately. We're going to get into what that means. 2, you're going to persuade them, increase the chance that your audience will get to yes. 3, you're going to get them talking. That's how you get people to authentically advertise for you, and they're spreading your message on their behalf. Step number 1, nudging them. I want you to imagine that a cafeteria is trying to get students to eat more healthy foods. Now, there are a lot of temptations like those cookies we can see right there, maybe some soda. Well, what could this cafeteria do? The conventional things that companies, governments, all sorts of entities use are restrictions, that is removing products, putting a ban on them, maybe regulating them. Another thing is changing money, that is adding a discount to do a certain thing or a tax to another thing so you don't do it. And then third, information, that is advertising, PSAs, and disclosures. So what might this look like for the cafeteria? Well, restrictions might look like taking all the junk food out of the cafeteria. Money might look like, well, let's give a healthy food discount or a junk food tax. And information might be putting up posters in the cafeteria explaining the benefits of eating healthy. Here's the thing though, these typical tactics tend to backfire in the real world. Restrictions, taking things away, often leads to people being angry that they were taken away. Money changes might lead to people getting upset over higher prices, and information is often missed and ignored. So here's what you could do. You could nudge them in the right direction instead. What could a nudge look like? Well, a nudge would mean we could take that unhealthy food and we could make it harder to get. Let's put it on higher shelves or maybe behind the counter at the cash register. And we could take the healthy food, we could put it right next to the cash register so it's easy to grab. All right, let's do another quick reflection. How much do you think that this could increase the healthy items that are sold? Maybe 1 to 5%? Do you think maybe 5 to 10%? Maybe you're thinking more like over 10%, up to 20 and beyond. Well, here's the answer. It's 78%. 78% more healthy items were sold in a similar experiment at a train station when healthy food was put right next to the cash register. This is called choice architecture. You can shape behavior by considering what the default behavior of your audience is. Now, I want you to imagine that you're shopping on 2 electronic sites for headphones. You come across these headphones, they look so great, the noise canceling feature is going to make your life so wonderful, and you see on the product page, it's $150. Now, you're perusing another site and you see it's $145 on the product page, but $5 at checkout is added for shipping. Well, hold on, what's going on here? They're exactly the same when you add it all up. And if we were purely rational, we wouldn't care. But we've all faced that second scenario in the real world, and it annoys us. Why does it annoy us? Well, this is prospect theory at work. Here's what you should know about prospect theory. It says that there is an S-curve of psychological value that we feel related to losses and gains, taking things away and getting them. Losses are felt more than gains, it's more pronounced. And 2, the other thing you should know is there's a diminishing effect. Well, why does that diminishing effect matter? If you were to plot that cost of the headphones on this chart, you would see that this is where the $150 charge lands. But the thing is, because of that curve, the $140 gets added to that -5 there, so you end up feeling a more pronounced negative when you separate the costs. It doesn't just happen on the negatives, it happens on the positives too. Imagine you're walking down the street and you stumble upon a $10 bill. Oh my gosh, it's my lucky day. I should buy a lottery ticket perhaps. Well, this is how much psychological value you'd feel from that gain. But imagine that one week you come across a $5 bill and the next day you come across another $5 bill, you would feel like the luckiest person on the planet because those values stack. Prospect theory says you should make sure to group pains but separate gains for your audience. Now, imagine a different study. Imagine there are 2 groups. One half of the group is given mugs. Nothing fancy about this mug. It's a plain white ceramic mug. The other group isn't given anything. They're given nothing. This group, they get to chatting for a little bit. And then at one point, the group is asked, okay, mug holders, how much would you have to be paid to part with that nice white ceramic mug? You know what they say? Oh, I just couldn't bear to part with it without about $7.12. Okay, great. Sellers, how much would you be willing to pay for those nice white ceramic mugs? $2.87. What's going on here? No, it is not a negotiation. They are not haggling. This is the endowment effect in action. Turns out people value what they already own. Dan Ariely has a great example of this. He calls the IKEA effect. He looked at people that put together their own furniture versus folks that had other people put it together, maybe a TaskRabbit or a friend or family member. And the people that put that IKEA furniture together themselves valued it far more. This is the endowment effect. Let's build on that a little bit. I want you to imagine a car wash. This car wash has a rewards program. How exciting, you're going to work your way toward a free car wash. In one variant, there's an 8-punch punch card. You get it blank, They just hand it to you when you get your car wash, and you have to get 8 more purchases to get that 9th car wash free. In the other group, it is a 10 punch card, but there are 2 punches already filled out. Now, let's think about this. What do we think is the percentage increase in punch card completion when there are 2 free stamps? Remember, both cards require 8 more car washes to get that 9th car wash free. It just so happens that that second one had 2 free stamps. 79% more people completed the card when there was already some free progress. What is this idea? Well, it is endowed progress. Not only do we value things that we already have, we value free progress. You can use free progress in your next campaign or on your next feature to motivate people to do more. Different scenario. I want you to imagine a cafe that sells 3 sizes of coffee. Let's say they sell an 8-ounce, a 12-ounce, a 16-ounce, a small, medium, large. And you know, what do you think the best seller is? Well, it turns out the medium one is the best seller. Now, let's say they run out of the 8-ounce cups one day and they decide, why don't we just upgrade? Let's get rid of that 8-ounce and let's add a new large, the 20 ounces. What do you think happens? Well, that 12 ounces doesn't stay the best seller. The 16-ounce cup becomes the next best seller. What's going on here? Well, it's not that people wanted exactly 12 ounces of wonderful hot liquid. It's that the middle choice is the easiest to make when we have limited information. This is called the compromise effect. With limited info, people pick the middle option. You've probably felt this at movie theaters, at restaurants, at convenience stores. Whenever there are 3 things, people tend to gravitate toward that middle option. All right, we walked through a few key behavioral phenomena under Nudge Them. You learned about choice architecture and designing the behavioral environment. So the default is what you want to happen. Prospect theory, where you feel losses and gains in a diminishing way, and you should really separate those gains to feel more positive and group losses so that you feel less negative. We learned about the endowment effect. We value things we have. Endowed progress. We also do more when we have free progress. The compromise effect, picking the middle option. And anchoring. What's anchoring? That's what I did to you on that first question when I asked you, how much more do you think that change in the cafeteria would change sales of healthy food? We said 1 to 5%. Maybe you thought of a lower number. When I've done this in big groups, people think of lower numbers more in the 1 to 10 range because I started at 1, even though that answer was 78%. All right, step 2 in the supercharge your growth framework. This is persuade them. How do you get them to yes? I love Cialdini. He's got this wonderful book, Influence, that I highly recommend to any product marketer. And there are a few principles that he teaches. 1 is reciprocity. 2, commitment and consistency. 3, social proof. 4, liking. 5, authority. And 6, scarcity. We're going to go through a few of them right now. All right, you've probably seen these shoes out and about before. For years, J.Crew exclusively sold the Nike Killshot 2 only in super limited batches and only through J.Crew stores. Now, this is what it looks like. It's a nice looking shoe, but it's not particularly fancy. This is not some celebrity shoe like a Kanye West Yeezy. It is just a nice looking classic shoe for $90. Now let's look at the aftermarket. They go on eBay for up to twice that cost. Well, J.Crew could clearly sell these for more money. Why aren't they selling them for more money and in indefinite quantities, as much as they can make? It's the same thing as what was happening with that airline example. It is scarcity in action. When there's a limited supply, it makes us want to buy. And we see this in this quote here, that Killshot 2 is white hot since early 2016. It's sold out every time it's hit jcrew.com. And this article thinks the reason they use this as a, let's call it a scarcity loss leader. They know that they could sell more, but what's way more valuable is the eyeballs that come to jcrew.com and into jcrew stores to buy chinos and button-down shirts while they have their attention. This is scarcity. Limited supply makes us want to buy. Now I want you to imagine that example we talked about earlier, that long line at Shake Shack. Well, what is this principle? This is social proof. We tend to get in line places. You may have even seen parodies of people getting in line in big cities like New York or San Francisco without quite knowing what they're getting in line for. But we use other people's decisions to make our own. I want you to imagine, how would you feel if you saw an empty restaurant? You've probably walked past empty restaurants before and you felt, oh, I'm not so sure if this is a great restaurant. Is anybody eating here? Is the food any good? Is it safe to eat? We use other people's behavior to inform our own. You've probably seen products do this. Airbnb is known for doing this. You see that little example down there. People are eyeing this place. You may have seen this on e-commerce sites where people tell you how many people are looking at a certain shirt or maybe a skincare product at the same time. Newsletters often do this too. We have over this many subscribers. It helps you feel like, oh, other people have done this. It must be good. It must be quality. You've probably also, given that we just had an election, thought recently about those I voted stickers. Those are another great classic example of social proofing. You can see a behavior that somebody did. All right, this is social proof. We look to others' behavior to inform our own. Now, I want you to imagine a situation where you're crossing the street, but it's not your light to cross. Traffic is coming by. It would be unsafe to cross. In one situation, there is a study going on. You don't know that, but there's a study going on, and an accomplice of the study in plain clothes walks out into the street. A few people go after that person and also try to cross the street against the light. Now there's another situation, same variant or a different variant of that same study, where a person's wearing a suit. Now what happens? Well, 3.5 times more people went into that red light road when the accomplice wore a suit. This is authority in action. It's similar to what happens when Trident used to advertise that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend the gum. It's that social proof, but with the credibility of somebody that seems like an authority figure. People are more likely to act when that authority figure adds credibility. Now, I want you to imagine you just finished eating at a wonderful restaurant. It was a lovely meal. It had French onion soup and it tasted delicious. It warmed your soul. At the end of it, the waiter comes, and there are a few situations here, okay? So in the control, you just get the check and that's it. Waiter walks away. In the next variant, you get the check, and with the check is one of those wonderful little mints. Oh, you love those mints. What a palate cleanser. In another variant, there are 2 mints that come with the bill. Wonderful. And in the last variant, waiter comes over, drops the bill on the table. There is a mint with it, and he starts to walk away, and he turns back around and he says, you know what? For you wonderful people, more mints. What do we think happens? Well, in that first variant, just with that addition of a mint, there's a 3% increase in tips for the waiter. In that second one, a 14% increase in tips just for 1 more mint. That last one, where he started to walk away and came back, 23% increase in tips. These tactics are free, but what is happening here? It's reciprocity. You give something to get something. It is similar if you've been to a mall. You might remember oftentimes fast food places giving out samples to encourage you to eat there. It's the little act of reciprocity. They're giving you something to get something in return. So we talked about a few of these principles. Reciprocity, commitment, and consistency is effectively people like to keep doing something that they said that they would do earlier or are known for doing. Generally speaking, they like to be consistent. Social proof we talked about. We use other people's decisions to inform our own. Liking, this is something I think a lot about as a product marketer when it comes to names. Ever pitch a name in a meeting and everybody hates it at first, but the 20th time they hear it, they start to like it? Nike. Nobody liked the name Nike to start, and now it's one of the most famous and beloved names in the world. Familiarity breeds liking. The more we like something, the more we are going to behave in that manner. Fifth, authority. We talked about how authority and credibility makes us more likely to do something, and scarcity, limited supply, makes us want to buy. All right, step 3, the last step of the framework. You're going to get them talking, and we're going to use a bunch of those tips from Professor Berger, who I talked about earlier, who was my thesis advisor. 6 principles for word of mouth that he has in his STEPPS, steps framework. Number 1 is social currency. 2, triggers, emotion, public, if something's public, practical value, and stories. We're going to talk about a few of them today. All right, I want you to think about a volume of Instagram hashtags. Things like fashion, 744 million posts about a year ago. Travel, over 450 million posts. Workout, 149 million posts. Foodie, 137 million posts. Okay, now let's look at a different kind of hashtag. Lazy, 11 million posts. Late, 6.2 million. Errands, under a million. Binging, 62,000. Now, this is strange because I know all of you aren't high fashion, traveling all the time, working out all the time, and eating wonderful food. In fact, I know we do idiosyncratic things like watch 8+ hours of Netflix on average. This was pre-COVID. I bet it's increased even more now, but binging of this list is the least popular hashtag. Well, what's happening? It's social currency at work. People talk about things that make them look good. You don't like to talk about things that don't make you look good. Switching gears, when I say peanut butter, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Well, for most people, it would be jelly. Peanut butter and jelly. This is what's called a cue or a trigger. And you can use this to your advantage in campaigns to increase product usage. A classic example is Kit Kat. Kit Kat ran a marketing campaign where they encouraged workers in offices to pair it with coffee. So every time these folks had a coffee break, they'd think to walk over to the vending machine and get a Kit Kat, a sweet treat to go with it. And it turned out this worked, creating this trigger in people's minds of coffee and Kit Kat, coffee and Kit Kat. After a year, the campaign caused sales to increase over 30%, bringing sales from 300 million annually to 500 million just by creating this cue in people's minds. Michelob, the beer company, did something similar. They had a campaign where they used to position their product for holidays. They said holidays were made for Michelob. Then one day, a bunch of execs said, you know what? It would really be lovely if we sold more beer. Let's change a little bit. They kept the exact same art direction. The only thing they changed, the cue. Weekends. It used to be holidays were made for Michelob. Now it's weekends were made for Michelob. You know what happens? Sales increased when they changed the cue. Change the cue, sell more beer. This is something that you can do too. Another example here. What do you think this is a chart of? Those little spikes that we see happen consistently. Well, it turns out it is Friday. Those spikes are Friday, the day of the week. And you know what they were searches for in that chart? For the song Friday by Rebecca Black. Yep, that's right. The song title itself was a cue in people's minds when it lined up with the day of the week, Friday. People thought about that song more often on that day of the week. So these are triggers. People talk about what is top of mind. Another example here, this time in the emotion category. Emotions really inspire people to talk about things. But because humans are complex beings, there are a range of emotions that we experience. Some of them are super positive emotions, others are negative. And there's also another category, the columns here, high arousal, high impact versus lower arousal. So one example of a positive high arousal might be excitement. I want you to think amusement park, going on a roller coaster. Low arousal, but positive might be content. You're happy, lovely Sunday afternoon, you're just content. Well, these emotions don't all make people share and talk in the same way. It turns out it's that the high arousal emotions make people talk. I want you to think about something that really excited you. Maybe it was bungee jumping or skydiving on a vacation. You probably told people about that for ages or know somebody that did. But it also works the other way. Negative high arousal emotions also inspire people to talk. I want you to think about maybe political rants that you've encountered on social media. People get really, really fired up. When they are fired up, people are more likely to share and more likely to talk. That's how you can use emotion to your advantage in campaigns and product development. So we talked about social currency. People share what makes them look good, triggers those cues in our minds, emotion, high arousal, both positive and negative. Public, this is when you can see something. I want you to think of how much people talked about iPods when they could see others wearing the white headphones in the early days. Practical value, when it has useful information. I want you to think of a lot of those tips and tricks and life hacks articles that are tended to be shared. And stories, people tend to remember stories better than just lists of facts and features. All right, let's look at a few real world examples. It's not just conceptual. I've been able to use this in my own work, and you can too. So here's one example. When I was at Lyft, we took people that were riding on shared rides. This is a ride where you share the car with people going a similar direction to save money. And what we did is we said, okay, you took this ride, this shared ride last month. Looks like you're saving money. Great for you. You're saving for something. What are you saving for? And what we did here is we put them into an email campaign with a progress bar a little bit filled up. They were already on their way from last month. That's that endowed progress that we were talking about. And we asked them, I want you to pick a goal. Tell me what you're saving for. Maybe it was a nice meal. Maybe it was a little weekend getaway. This is another tactic called active choice. I want you to make a decision, user. And then we would send them updates along the way. There were several touch points throughout the course of the next month that showed that progress bar filling up as they took more shared rides and saved more money. Now, everyone got a dynamic goal based on their past behavior, and we increased it a little bit so that it was a bit of a stretch goal. And we got to take advantage of something called goal gradient theory. This behavioral phenomena says that people do more of something when they get closer to completing a goal. So that's how we're using that to inspire people to save more and ride more. And then at the end, they got us a recap email. We told them how much more money they saved. Now, how did this do? Sure, it's a wonderful engagement campaign, but it drove business results too. Shared rides increased stat sig, that product usage that we were really going for, and monthly active riders also increased stat sig. The insight here, you can use psychology to change behavior for free without spending a dime. Another example, we used to sell at Lyft ride passes. These were things that lasted about a month long. You could buy them, pay up front to lock in a discount for the rest of the month. That has since become Lyft's subscription and membership program, Lyft Pink. But what we did at the time was we used the lessons of scarcity to sell more and drive product adoption. You can see in the subject line here, 93% of passes sold. It's your last chance, final hours. One of the most powerful things of driving click-through was that little progress bar you can see underneath the CTA button that filled up. It said 93% of passes sold. This was really effective. Short supply makes people want to buy. Remember that. You can use this in your campaigns too. Since I've been at HIMSS, there are a number of examples. Two I'll share with you from HIMSS and Hers. One is our cologne. We had produced a limited run of cologne, and sure, we could have just explained what it smelled like, that it was a wonderful experience to wear it, and left it at that. But because I knew that short supply makes people want to buy, we leaned into the scarcity and actually used it to brand it in the product name. Small batch scent, you can see in the screen there. We used that to stand out versus other colognes that we were competing with in the market. And then one more example, we talked about how authority and visibility makes people more likely to do something. A great example is we updated our hair loss page where we sell both prescription and non-prescription products to help with getting thicker, fuller hair and regrowing it. And it used to be that we just focused on it's better to take action. Here are hair loss products. We have since updated the page, and you can see in that headline there, doctor trusted hair loss treatments. And you can see that first benefit, FDA approved treatment options. We're using authority there to convey our expertise and inspire people to shop. And it's working. When we ran this as an experiment, a stat sig increased number of people started their medical visit versus the control. All right, now how can you use this yourself? I'm going to leave you today with a framework that I have used in my own work. I call it the Supercharge with Psychology Scorecard. What I want you to do is think about all of those things that we learned in that 3-step process of nudging, persuading, and getting them talking, and evaluating each of those concepts in each of these cells. Now, imagine that each of these cells is worth about half a point, and you're going to go through first, and you're going to think about for your campaign or your product, how can I nudge my audience? I'm going to evaluate how I might use choice architecture. I'm going to evaluate how I might use prospect theory. Now, it's not that you must find a way to use it. It's that I want you to think through each of these things deliberately. You'll do the same thing for persuade them. How can I think about reciprocation, social proof, authority, and the same thing for getting them talking. Think about social currency and triggers and emotion. Each of those 6, they add up to 3 points total. So give yourself half a point if you think through how you might use it for your project. One more half point for completion. Have you evaluated each cell in the 3 rows above? And one more for execution. Have you identified one tactic per row that you can implement? Now, in total, these would all add up to 10 points. I don't get 10 points every time. You won't get 10 points every time. But what is important is thoroughness. You want to think through each of these cells and try to find a way to use them. It's not that you need to maximize all these cells. Pulling more levers won't necessarily yield better results, but being thoughtful, thinking about human behavior will. So add up those scores, see how you do. Use this as a handy tool every time you do go to market to think about how you can set your product up for more adoption. But I do want you to remember, like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man taught us, with great power comes great responsibility. It's very easy to get into a territory with behavioral economics where you are doing things that are not so ethical. You must use these always in a win-win way. When you think back to that Lyft shared rides example, it was a win-win because yes, we drove more product adoption, but also we encouraged people to take more shared rides rather than individual rides, encouraging them to save money, which was great for them, got more people in fewer cars, which was great for cities and congestions. Use these in win-win ways and not only good for the business ways. All right, so last reflection here. Did you learn something that you can use on a current or future project today? Think about that. Now you have the tools to make your growth tactics more effective, grow without always needing more budget, and grow while protecting your brand and your product from discounting and diluting perceived value and willingness to pay. The next time you see a long line outside a restaurant, or a wonderful travel Instagram, or maybe even those Nike kill shot shoes on the street, you'll know exactly why. Thank you so much for your attention today. If you enjoyed this, I would so appreciate if you followed me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to double the number of followers I have, and every week I share snackable insights on product marketing and consumer psychology. I would so love if you went over to my LinkedIn profile and hit that follow button. If you only remember one thing today, I want you to remember all the way back to the beginning. Yes, there's market research. Yes, there's UX research. Yes, there's consumer insights and competitive analysis, but don't forget to start with people. When you start with the mind, growth won't be far behind. Thank you very much.